Greetings, brothers and sisters. One of my viewers said Fetterman had been on The View. The person was apologizing because they thought a number of people sent me this, but nobody did. And I haven't seen it yet, but you know how could it be how could it not be great? I mean, this guy wearing shorts in the middle of the winter, coming out in a sweatshirt, sucking as much as he does, talking to those wonderful ladies on The View. How can it not be epic? So I got one other thing to show you, but let's get through this first.
So John Fetterman is the colorful, straight-talking senator from the great state of Pennsylvania.
Oh, my God. That's your introduction? Colorful, straight-talking senator from the state of Pennsylvania.
And he's proving that he can overcome any challenge thrown his way. Please welcome Senator...
Wait a minute. He's proven that? He's proven nothing, right? I mean, he did have a stroke and, you know.
Senator John Fetterman.
Woo, look at him go. Bring him in. Yes, standing O. Stand up and give this guy a round of applause. Get on your feet. Look at, hey, everybody, it's me. This is wonderful. This is already great. This is already great. This is already platinum.
Welcome to the show, Senator.
You're even taller in person.
Yeah. We always talk
Yeah, he's even more of an ogre in person.
to you on video, on streaming, whatever you call it.
Well, actually, I wear lifts. I know.
Yeah, DeSantis called. He wants his lifts back.
That's not sad. Okay, that's perfectly normal to wear lifts, you know, and everything.
Yeah, right. Well, you know what? We're going to get to politics in the second segment, but I really want to ask you about the last time you were here. You were still in the early months of recovering a near
Did they get rid of Whoopi? I think they got rid of Whoopi, right?
fatal stroke you suffered in May of 2022. So bring us up to date. How are you feeling? You look pretty good.
Yeah, well, actually I had incredible kind of support from my wife Giselle, who's right there.
Woo, she's a witch. Woo.
Thank you.
She's a witch. Woo.
And everyone was really amazing and supportive. And I know you guys here were also very supportive too. So thank you. It really means a lot to know that. Truly, yeah.
Truly, it's truly.
And now, kind of fast
It is wonderful.
forward that, I've gotten, you know, much better and better. And Fox News is devastated to know that. but
They love you. Everyone who wants to mock the Democratic Party loves you, buddy. You're a gift for them. They want you. They want you to be around. I want you to be around, right? You're a gift that keeps on giving.
Senator, we want to point out that what you have in front of you today is you're using a closed captioning to assist you with lingering hearing and processing issues. You're one of more than 40 million Americans living with a disability. And
you're holding one of the most powerful positions in our government, right? Again, people with disabilities, people who have been impaired some way, you know, that is, I mean, you know, it's not something to be mocking or whatever. You know, and they should be able to function. I mean, they shouldn't be looked down on, right? It's something that's happened to you. It could happen to you. People have dementia, all these things. It's going to happen to you to some extent. You're not going to be as sharp as you now are as you get older. It's happened to me. I'm not as sharp in different ways. I can't do what I used to do as you get older. That's aging. And then there's the health things and all the health issues that make people, you know, disabled to some extent. But as you get disabled, your ability to do work and function is impaired, right? And you shouldn't be holding this type of a position. If you have problems processing information like the way he does and understanding people, like he got up and said, the joke's on you. I've had a stroke. I don't even know what you're talking about. And they were talking about Palestinian kids being murdered, right? He can't do his job. He can't function. This guy's, you know, ability to make decisions and understand things and read what's going on in the world and understand people and understand everything. And that's part of your job as a senator. And, you know, all these senators suck, so it's one thing. But, you know, like just as a serious note here, this guy's got this thing he's got to carry around to help him understand what's going on. He can't perceive reality. He can't understand what this guy can't understand what the ladies of The View are saying. This is one of the most remedial shows. She's really stupid. this is a stupid person here, right? And he can't, she's too much for him. He needs help understanding the remedial talk of this person here.
You faced terrible
Absolutely.
insults, offenses, comments, just reprehensible stuff from some
It's
people.
reprehensible.
Yeah.
Some
well,
on Fox News.
Reprehensible. Like, well, read your thing.
What has that taught you? How has it changed you?
Well, it's taught me, one, how important that it is to have the kind of technology, if you have a disability, to be able to allow you to participate fully. And I just want to give the example.
It's all good if you want to participate fully in things that you're capable of doing, but not, making decisions. Again, politicians don't have any real power. It's all, it's all a joke. But I mean, it's supposed to at least look like these people are mentally competent. I mean, it's, you guys make fun of Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's impaired. The right makes fun of AOC. She's impaired. They're stupid people, right? You have people who are of a lesser intellect and lesser abilities who are in these powerful positions, and they're being mocked because they're not up for the job, right? They can't do the job that they've been assigned to do here.
Is actually on my phone. It's the same thing that allows this, and I want people to see and understand there is too, is that, these are like your eyes, and
They're like your eyes, except as a phone.
I'm able to process things, and this allows me to participate in interviews. It allows me to participate in all kinds of conversations with my children, everyone. And I want to make sure that everybody where they had a stroke or for whatever reasons has the kind of technology that they need to allow them to fully participate in our society.
Senator.
Woo, you're such a great man. Woo! Again, yeah, okay, you had a stroke, and that sucks. And I feel for you. And they shouldn't have put you in as senator. If you got to look at these screens all the time to perceive reality around you, debilitating migraine headaches. There's things that, like, I couldn't do this job. I couldn't be a senator, right? There's jobs that I can't do. And if I did do them, I would be miserable and I would suck at it. And whatever it was, and I'm aware of these jobs that I can't do. We all have our abilities. And doing this job, his job is being in front of the public, being in front of the people, and being able to assure them that he's got the government is competent. Again, it's not, but that's what you're supposed to do. Most of his job is talking in public, and he sucks at it, right? Like he's one of the worst. And they're saying we should give him a break. Let's put all broken people. Are you going to run people based on their disabilities for a president? You have a senile president right now, and you're going to say, all right, only people with disabilities who are, struggle functioning, who can't have a conversation with their kids unless they have a device that helps them process what they're doing, they should be senators, right? Like, this is what they're saying here. Woo!
Less than 6 weeks after you were sworn in, you checked yourself into an inpatient treatment for clinical depression, and you stayed there for a month and a half. I have to commend.
Exactly. That's what you do. When you get a job, the first day at work, you go, all right, I'm going to go and do orientation at my new job, and then I'm going to check myself into a treatment facility. That's what people do their first day of their job.
You right away, as someone who's experienced depression, oftentimes the hardest step is asking for help. So what made you realize that you needed help?
I knew I was in help. It was
He knew he wasn't help.
incredibly difficult, and ironically, it got much worse after I won the election, and I was confusing people. My children, they understood. They were like, "Dad, you won. What's wrong? Aren't we enough?" And
I said, no, you're not. And look, they're all here, and this is the witch.
knew I was harming them, and I couldn't
He
get
was
out of
harming them.
bed. And
Wait, what is it?
and I couldn't get out of bed. And in fact, Thanksgiving,
I was harming them, and I couldn't get out of bed. Yeah, this guy's, put him in a top-level position here.
is my favorite holiday, and I couldn't get out of my bed. And I wouldn't have really understood what it really means. No, you literally can't get out of bed before to actually be not able to get out of bed.
Exactly. You can't understand what it's like not to be able to get out of bed until you can't get out of bed. It makes sense. The guy's brilliant. Put that on a fortune cookie.
And I was in help, and it
He
got
wasn't help. Exactly. He wasn't help.
worse and worse. And then I realized that I have to get help. And that's the message that I have for anybody, that it's like, if you are suffering from depression, please, please get help.
Let me ask you something. Do you know what triggered it?
It wasn't just one specific thing that triggered it. It was really like a step down, step down, step down, step down kind of a thing. One of the things that was a part of it is kind of like the volume and how much hate there was online about that. I made the mistake of just kind of like, no, I wish I didn't have done that. And it was.
You know, that's part of your job. I deal with negative comments and have for, so many years. And it's what you have to deal with. If you can't deal with it, you don't do the job, right? And you were a controversial, when you imposed yourself, or you were an anti-Trump person when the election debacle was going on in Pennsylvania. That's how this guy came out. And he was interviewed in these things. And when you became a national figure and they decided to run you for senator in a state that was really important in that election, a controversial election, and all the hate that was dumped on Donald Trump and all the division that the powers that be have inflicted on the American people, when you were a part of that, you were going to be a lightning rod, especially when you were so bad at your what you're supposed to do. When you got up and you did that debate, and you were worse than Joe Biden in your gaffes, and you got up there and you said, "Good night, everybody," right? At that moment, in the way that you look and everything, you are going to be mocked, right? That's what happens. Like, that's what you got to accept, that as being part of your job. And it was too much for him, where he couldn't get out of bed. He was harming his children. He wasn't able to celebrate his favorite holiday. And he checked himself into a treatment center. He was depressed and suicidal. And now he can't do his job without these devices and processing things. You should step down. You're not able to do your job. The people of Pennsylvania are not happy with your performance. And, nobody is. Like, you're there to be mocked by Republicans. That's your one, your lone ability. You're there to make Joe Biden look good, right? Like, that's all you can do. You're not capable of functioning in your role. And go do something that you're capable of doing, right? You won't be depressed because you'll be able to feel good about your work. You wouldn't be overwhelmed and over your head.
It wasn't what the things that they said, terrible things, but it was just so many, millions of just kind of views and videos of making fun of if I miss a word or anything like that. And it was like, is this going to be my career?
Yeah, it is.
That's what I'm going to have.
But did you also
That's in fact why you're there. This is probably why they tapped you in the first place.
read the millions of people giving you support and love and backing?
Amazing. Of course, my family was incredible. Everyone in the Senate, Republican or Democrats, were actually very supportive. There wasn't any kind of comments and negativity or anything
Trump
like that.
too?
What's up? Yeah. We had some that actually
She's so
visited.
mean.
They actually visited me at Walter Reed, Republicans and Democrats.
Well, Senator, the hard part about the negative, just again, as someone who's dipped before, is it starts to
She's a dipper. She likes to dip into depression every once in a while. She double dips.
confirm the critical voice in your own head. Because during the times when you're in depressive states, it oftentimes feels a bit hopeless, like nothing matters enough. And I think then you see people confirming nothing matters enough and you are nothing. And I think that's the damaging part when you're in a low space.
Right.
When he's in a low space. Double dipper. Listen to Double Dipper.
I want people to understand. And then if you don't check your depression, you can actually begin to have the conversation with yourself about harming yourself. Mm-hmm. And I was in that.
You got to check your depression or it leads to suicidal thoughts. Come on. Everybody knows that.
And at first, I really didn't want to talk about that. But then I realized if I could help as many people as much, I wanted to have that conversation. And I want everybody to know, of course.
So what he's saying here is, think about what he's saying, because most people will miss what he just said there. He's going to help other people. How is he going to help other people? It's because he's a success story. He's the after. Like when you're depressed, he's like, hey, look, I made it through. He's the after. He is what you have to look forward to being Do you understand? Like it's a person who's weighed 400 pounds and gets down to 300 pounds and is trying to motivate people who are overweight, right? But most people who are overweight aren't 300 pounds. They're less than 300 pounds, right? When you see these before or after pictures to inspire you, you want to look like the person after. But if the person after is someone like Fetterman, right? So when you see these people with their before and after pictures of how they looked before when they were overweight and how they look now, you want to look like that person looks now. Otherwise, if they were heavier than you, then you're not going to be motivated, right? So when Fetterman is the after for depressed people, right? This is what you have to look forward to. This is how highly you can function. So he is not a success story. He's not the after. He's a guy who can't do his job. He doesn't dress appropriately for his job, which is, I wouldn't want to wear that stuff either. I dress like he does. I'm not insulting his dressing, but I'm not wanting to be senator. I'm not wanting to do a job that I'm not suited for and wouldn't want, right? He's not able to do his job. And so he's just a mockable person. He's just going to be there to be mocked, which we see here, right? And he's like saying he's helping people by showing them, hey, you can be a success like me. Like if that isn't depressing, if Fetterman is your goal, if Fetterman is your inspiration, right?
If you are suffering from depression, please get help. And then please, you must promise yourself that you never, 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 ever harm yourself.
That's a negative suggestion, and that doesn't work. I've talked about that in the past. All suggestions should be worded in a positive way. But, promising yourself means nothing, right? Like self-harm happens, it's more like that's not a solution. Oh, I promised myself, so I'm not, yeah.
I've lost friends that did, and not because they were weak or I was very strong. I was lucky, and I'm paying that forward.
He was lucky.
And I want everybody, so no one has to suffer from those kind of choices.
And we've really appreciated
Nailed it. Woo!
comments you've made in Senate hearings speaking about your experience, because I think it's important to spotlight. But I wanted to ask, because you mentioned Thanksgiving's your favorite holiday, but last year was a really tough Thanksgiving for you. How are things this year?
It was. It wasn't as tough for me. It was much actually more difficult for my family, because I couldn't get out of bed, and
Exactly. I was fine. I was happy in bed.
I was able to kind of hang on until the election, and then after I won.
Think about what he said. He was able to hang on up to the election, and then he couldn't get out of bed. She's a man-hater, this dude right here. And she often comments on him and talks about how women are better and, all these things. But the guy couldn't get out of bed. And he held on till the election was over, and then he fell apart. Like he failed the test, right? He crumbled under the process. Jojo Magoo did the same thing. Jojo Magoo couldn't run a candidacy. Remember when Jojo Magoo had that gaffe where he was talking about violence against women? And he said, you got to keep on punching at the problem. You got to keep on punching at it. You got to keep on punching at it.
Vice President Biden, the Me Too movement has forced a cultural reckoning around the issue of sexual violence and harassment against women in America. Are there specific actions that you would take early in your...
So there was the question. And here was his answer.
That's rarely ever occurs. And so we have to just change the culture, period, and keep punching at it and punching at it and punching at it. It will be a big... No, I really mean it. It's a gigantic issue. And
Look, she's laughing. He's trying not to react. The audience is like, do you realize what you just did and said? He's, right? And he doesn't know. He's clueless. And this was an indication he couldn't do the job of president. This was one of many indications, many gaffes, where his solution to domestic abuse was to keep on punching at it and putting his hand up as a fist, raise his fist and say it like that. You got to keep on punching at it and punching at it. And Kamala, who's going to be his vice president, is laughing at him because he's senile. And the audience is taken aback, and he's unaware of what the gaffe he just did. Didn't apologize for it. He probably isn't aware of it. Never was aware of how bad he sucked, right? And the electoral process, he failed. He failed to connect with his voters. He couldn't, run as a candidate. He's wandering around stage. He's challenging people to push-up contests. He failed. They had COVID. They rigged the system against Bernie Sanders, first of all, so that Joe Biden would win. And then they had COVID, so Joe Biden didn't have to campaign. But he was, the campaign process is supposed to, separate the wheat from the chaff. And it doesn't, because there's not really any wheat out there. It's all chaff, right? But, it's supposed to be a vetting process, right? Where people, if you crack like Kennedy has cracked, right? Kennedy talked about this in New Hampshire himself, but he's cracked under the stuff to do with Israel and the things he's failed. So Fetterman cracked under the pressure, and he couldn't get out of bed after winning the election, which means he couldn't do the job, which we know. Like, he can't do the job, right? I mean, even as bad as these other senators and politicians are, he's not even on their level of minimal competence.
I gave myself to just throw myself over and really embrace, my depression, and was, I couldn't get out of bed. And
Embraced his depression.
For holidays, Thanksgiving or Christmas, I wasn't participating effectively on both, and those were my favorite holidays. And my children were scared, and they didn't understand because they seemed like I looked okay.
Was this Thanksgiving better?
Oh, it's amazing! It was the best Thanksgiving of my life.
Woo! Woo! So you have to re-ask the question.
This Thanksgiving better?
He can't even function in an interview here. There's a part 2 I'll go to whatever on my other channel or here. There's another 4-minute video. But she asked the question, is this Thanksgiving better? This is what the original question was. This woman asked that question. And Sonny, the view is too complex for him. The view is too over his head. And he's like, couldn't answer the question. So we talked about what happened in the past holidays, but he didn't get to the original question, which was, is it better now? And then he did, and woo, he had a good Thanksgiving, woo. He's dressed in shorts. He's on The View. It's Christmas time. He's wearing a sweatshirt, underdressed for The View, right? He's supposed to be a senator. He comes out, and he needs a device to interpret the complex reasoning of these dopes on The View, and he's failed, right? He can't do his job. Like, this is part of his job, and he's remedial. And again, you're handicapped, you're handicapped. That's no shame on that. But you don't put a handicapped person in a job they can't do, right? You don't put a handicapped person in something that is beyond their ability to do. And for all of us, I mean, in general, we're all got our abilities and our disabilities. I'm a dyslexic person, and I'm an introvert. And there's lots of jobs I can't do, and I don't do those jobs, right? That's not what I do, right? And people say, oh, why don't you run for political office? Well, because I can't do that job, and I don't want it, but I can't do it anyway. It's not what I'm specialized, it's not what I'm good at. And he's not good at pretty much anything. I don't know what job he could do, but he can't do this one. And then when he gets mocked, it isn't because people are cruel. Yeah, they might be cruel. It's because he's not doing his job and he sucks at it. He's even worse than Joe Biden, who's got dementia. Joe Biden at least was competent. Joe Biden is better than him, exponentially so. So this guy, Rich Eisen, I covered something on my other channel, and I put this in my last video here, but somehow I must have hit pause, and it wasn't there when I went to edit, and I was too sick to reshoot it. But this guy talks about there's a woman named Charissa something or other, and she's now is the host of the Amazon has football games. Amazon Prime has football games on. And she did an interview. She talked about how sometimes coaches wouldn't. She was a sideline reporter, and she talked about how she was make up stuff. She'd make up quotes like, things the coaches would say, and nobody was going to, call her out on it because, it was just stuff that the coaches would say anyway. But it would be times that the coaches were too angry or too upset to give her a quote. And she needed a quote, so she'd make it up, right? And she's kind of a weird person, she's one of these hosts or whatever. But the internet went ballistic in the sports world, like it was some horrible thing she did. And, it's a meaningless job, right? A sideline reporter. But his wife's a sideline reporter. Like he recently commented about the anti-Semitic stuff in universities, right? And I covered this on my other channel. And he married a sideline reporter. And his wife is a sideline reporter. So he gets into it here a little bit.
Biased when it comes to sideline reporters. I'm married to one.
So this is his wife, Susie Schuster. He married a Schuster. And a Susie Schuster. And she used to do sideline reporting for college football or something like this, right? And so they now have kids, and I don't know if she works or maybe she has her own something here. She looks like she's maybe has a podcast. But he says something here that's hilarious. Now, Charissa apologized, and then Charissa is like such a pretentious name, right? Like, a person named Charissa, of course, is going to make up quotes. But then he says this.
Reporting. And, straight up, I mean, again, I just went all in on my alma mater earlier. That's not what she said.
She didn't say. That's not what she said. Because she came in and said she really didn't make up quotes. Of course she did.
On Part by Take. It wasn't like 0 for 7 this. It was using the coach speak and coach cliches as a space filler where she didn't need to fill any space. And
this is the big thing here.
That's the part of this that's so frustrating.
It's so frustrating.
I don't blame the sideline reporters for being so upset because
they're so upset.
Not space fillers.
They're not space fillers. Sideline reporters are space fillers, right? Anybody who's watched sports knows that sideline reporters are, space fillers, right? Well, let's listen to him here.
They are not. I just came off of games with Jamie Erdahl and Stacey Dales and Sarah Walsh, and they worked their asses off. And that's what this glib comment about, coaches weren't talking or whatever, so I just made it up. And she also said one time, I guess on her own podcast, that Rod Marinelli said something completely inappropriate. And so she just made something up because she's not going to call Rod out on the air was the implication. And Susie was on the business end of that stuff too.
She was Susie, his wife. He talked about how hard she worked, and she would prepare for days and get all the info so she could do her job as a sideline reporter.
Chuck Amato of NC State, one time she did a sideline report with him. She said, is there anything that you could see? She's running off to the locker room at half. Is there anything that you see you can attack in the second half? And he looked at her and said, yeah, you.
No way. He said that to your wife?
And then she ran after him and asked more.
Why? Wouldn't that indicate you probably should stop talking to the person?
Questions. And Gary Thorne even said, she's running like Hudson, who was our dog at the time, and it's a tough job, and anything that makes it seem like it's a space filler or anything else other than what it is, which is a crucial part of a broadcast
It's not a crucial part of the broadcast. Now, I listened to the football game. I watched a football game years and years ago. They tried a football game without announcers. And it was impossible to watch because there's so much downtime, right? You can go to a live game and there's things going on in the live game. You're participating, you're a crowd, there's other people. But there's so much downtime in football and baseball. There's more time out than there's time in. And so the announcers sell you the game because it's not really all that interesting. And so all the stuff that announcers do, all the stuff that sports, all these, sports shows out there, is they make the game interesting. They create storylines. They create drama. They, bring up, they make the athletes human beings who have struggles and whatever it is, right? And all this stuff is made it so that you watch these, you'll take an interest in what's going on there. Because it's not all that interesting. If I didn't grow up watching sports, I would have no interest in it, right? I'm used to it. That's the only reason I watch it. It's something that's familiar to me, and I played sports or whatever. But the announcing is minimal. Like, the announcers, if they're good at selling the game, then sure, it's great. And I've talked about this in recent videos. The sideline reporters were brought about because there was no women involved, and it was mostly a male audience, and sometimes women would watch the games with their husbands, so they wanted to bring women in. So they brought this woman, Phyllis George, who was a former Miss America or something, Miss USA or something, and she started doing this to bring in a woman who was, going to help bring in a women audience, expand their audience. And then they brought these other sideline reporters. It was a job created just to bring in, mostly sideline reporters were women, and to increase this, the user base. And so then, their job is meaningless, though. Mostly it's stuff you fast forward through because there's nothing a sideline reporter has ever said where it was an epiphany, right? And it blew your mind because it's even less like, it's even more superficial than the announcing.
Dynamite journalists is beyond the pale. It's the only way to put it. And I'm assuming Carissa regrets it. She should be apologizing to everybody in the business right now. Straight up. If that's in fact what she seemed to do, and that's what she said she did, and now that it's being appropriately called on the carpet. So, and everybody was responding, well, I don't listen to sideline reporters anyway. It's like, okay, so you didn't want to know what was happening to Joe Burrow last night? You don't want to know about any of these stories?
Okay, so he's saying that when something happens, like a player is injured, Joe Burrow was recently injured. So when a player is injured, then you want a sideline reporter, but they don't even need to be on air. They could you could have somebody go and ask what's going on with the player. Usually they're not going to tell you when the player gets injured. The most they'll say is he's not going to come back into the game because they're going to have testing and they want to see what's going on before they make an announcement about the person's injury. And that's how it always goes. You may not even find out for a couple of days how severe the injury is. But if there is something of importance that happens, right, you don't need a sideline reporter. You can just have the information go to the two broadcasters, and they could relay the information. So the sideline reporter is actually, there's nothing significant that they say. It's just an extra person there. And it's like, anybody who watches sports knows it's unnecessary. And the way he's talking about it, it's like some, sacred thing that she's broken here. Like he's talking about this being journalism, and there's no journalism in CNN. And so we don't expect it from you clowns that doing sports reporting. Anyways, this guy went on to, I guess he said it earlier, he went after the universities. So I ended up covering this guy a couple of times. He used to be funny and he used to be on ESPN, but now he thinks he's got something to say and he doesn't, right? Just like Fetterman. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pouring from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.